Mr. Chairman.
Okay, it is 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning, and we will have Scott Aiken, right?
Father, we come to you today just to seek your heart and your movement in this county. And that's where we're coming forward in great loss from last week that affected a lot in this county, God. We just pray that you touch the hearts that have been affected by the loss of family, Lord. And God, let us always remember that life is short, and what it's about is that we would effectively find ways to love one another. God, as we come forward in the necessity that has to be done to run this county, we just say, have your way. And God, we just say, create peace and find ways for unity and find ways that we move together. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Follow me, pledge allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So things like the gentleman that was here with the signs last week, things like this does not help fix what the problem is. And I would love to have public comment. As soon as I see a change in behavior where adults show up and behave like adults, I will be more than happy to reinstate that. But until then, I'm not really even interested in having a conversation about it because nobody wants to have a civil conversation. It is 9:02 and I recess this meeting till 10 o'clock. Thank you. That helps you, right?
You mean a piece of bacteria, right?
It is 10 o'clock and it is time for our regular scheduled Bonner County business meeting, and I would entertain a motion to adopt the order of the agenda.
I move to adopt the order of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I second the motion.
Roll call vote?
Commissioner Amar?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. District 2, Commissioner Williams report.
All righty. Tonight at Sandpoint City Council is the 530 county property rezone. You can go on to their link and you can see the staff report as well as comments. They do have an option for public comment during that particular hearing. So if you have an interest in that, make your way there at 5:30. So I want to thank everybody for participating with our community chat. I think we have gotten a wealth of information from our clerk today on elections that is really invaluable and given some direction for us as a community, and actually a little bit of direction for our precinct committee men and women to help engage and make sure that we stay with a good number of poll workers and understanding the process. As mentioned, we won't have a primary, we'll have a caucus, and we all kind of don't know what that really looks like in Bonner County. So that information might come out tonight at the Central Committee meeting that is at the Ponder Event Center at 6:30. So our upcoming chats are going to be next. It's going to be Dennis Engelhardt, our assessor. So he's going to take up the next two for the first 2 weeks in, actually, let me skip that. The next one is actually our prosecutor. That's next Tuesday. And so everybody asks me questions about the interface between prosecutor's office and the county commissioners. This is an opportunity for you to come and ask those questions about the rules and actually to hear what the prosecutor's office works on. It is not just answering emails from county commissioners. They do have actually a pretty significant role in Bonner County. And so Lewis Marshall, our elected prosecutor, will be present to give us that understanding and to answer questions. The first 2 weeks in August are going to be our assessor. The first is going to be specifically on valuation. I submitted a list of questions after going through BOEs that I had that I felt that members of the community would also have, to go over how they came to the values, how they used the comps, how they identified the values when they're not finding a like area, so that we can get that specific education and what you can do as a recipient of an assessment that you don't agree with. And then the next week is actually going to be specifically on how that valuation translates into the tax portion, so that we give enough time to have a pretty good assessor discussion. It's an opportunity not to just understand the topic, but to get to know your assessor. Because of the way he was put in office, you didn't really get to ask questions to understand his mindset, and that would be a great opportunity. And then on August 15th, Road and Bridge will be doing a chat to discuss the Vape Road, Duford, which is supposed to be done in 2 weeks-ish. I think the ish is right. But they're working really hard on that. And then go over some specific topics that members of the community have consistently asked to include. Why do we mag? Where do we do it? Why do we do it? Roads that are private versus public. So those will be some things that are coming up. An update for Old Town is the mirror is up on Lane Jail Canyon Road in Old Town. Please don't get blinded by the sun. And then hopefully we get some feedback after a few weeks of having that mirror there to see if their concern for traffic has been resolved with that. I participated with the quarterly jail inspection. Our jail has passed its inspection, but there is a concern with respect to the imbalance of male to female. There was a thought at one time that we might not pass because we had more females than we could house. But it's a definite need for us to focus on that as we come towards budget time, to pay attention to what is being used at our jail system. We continue to see people housed in our jails up north that are not residents of Bonner County or the state of Idaho. So that is an increased cost that people are identifying. In terms of upcoming meetings, the development impact fee discussion with Tischler Buys. I want to make sure everybody puts that on their calendar, because that is going to happen on August 10th. That is an opportunity to understand impact fees and how and if that would be a direction that Bonner County could address with respect to the impact to our infrastructure. August is my I'm going back to picking a community to work with now that we've done that initial, the BOEs, and so it's Priest River. So I will be actually visiting with Priest River and some county employees on the 11th. We're going to go over the memorandum of understanding for that particular group and identify some issues and concerns that they have down in Priest River. I am still working on the MLD workshop. If you guys have ideas of people that you think would be good presenters, please let me know. I'm looking at more of the September month because there's a lot of people that want to participate that are actually not in the area right now due to the summer months. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have a good presenter that you have an idea of. I did actually, I like to have who I know you agree with and who I know people have questions, because that allows us to kind of have a meeting of the minds. I actually did speak with Jeremy Grimm, and he would also like to participate. That is, look, Dave, he's like, no, she didn't. It's important to understand how people think. And so I am inviting anybody that would be willing to sit at the table and have a discussion, because we need to understand what we're working with on all sides, and you do that by inviting people to the table, even if it's uncomfortable. So just make sure you know that's what we're doing. And then August 2nd is our behavioral health regional meeting. Anybody in the public can participate. I've got a lot of people asking me that question. You can log on to Panhandle Health's meeting and participate with the behavioral health regional. It's a monthly meeting. So on the 10th at 9 a.m., there's also the local emergency planning meeting, and that's in our admin building. And so that is all I have for an update for you. Any questions for me regarding the update? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. District number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, as with last week, I'd like to start with reading from the Idaho Republican Party platform adopted July 16, 2022. Article 2, Citizen Involvement in Government. The Idaho Republican Party believes that government works best when its citizens become actively involved. The party encourages all citizens to engage in healthy debate on all issues that will increase citizen control of government. And Section 2. We seek to heighten the level of discourse by encouraging all office holders, candidates, and citizens to be civil, dignified, honest, and forthright in their discussions, actions, statements, and political processes. With that being said, there is got a lot of stuff going on in Bonner County at this time. And here is the update from the Consalas fire, which has grown to 414 acres, and this is in Washington, but they're accessing it through Priest Lake area. It's only 10% contained. There are 276 personnel on that fire. There are 9 hand crews, 4 engines, 1 helicopter. So it continues to grow, and we are blessed to have the support that we do so early so that we can try to get this under control. At the B-top fire, it is 78% contained, and I believe that today's update, which will be forthcoming, is that the Forest Service has done a good enough job managing it that it will be returned to local control. What I would like to bring to people's attention is this was caused by lightning. It grew to 49 acres. There was 123 personnel that were deployed to fight this fire. 2 engines, 3 helicopters, and at least 2 bucket planes. When I traveled to Clark Fork to attend one of the meetings, I have to say it's pretty cool to watch those bucket planes dip into Lake Pend Oreille. It is an incredible outlay of resources that we were very fortunate to have, and I'm very grateful that Bonner County was able to get control of that, and I have nothing but gratitude for the personnel that have done that. Tomorrow I'm going on a field trip, which I'm kind of excited about, with the Panhandle Forest Collaborative, and we're going to travel to Warren Island, where we're going to review recreational use, forest health, and fuel loading on the Priest Lake Islands, discuss potential options for forest management, and there's also going to be discussion around grizzly bear recovery in northern Idaho, which is interesting because at the B-top fire, as we had firefighters that were protecting property and et cetera, they got to hang out with grizzlies, which I don't know that they were very helpful. Last Friday, the Board of Commissioners and other elected officials traveled to the IAC Region 1 meeting. I am the Legislative Committee Chair, and I have been working with Benewah County Commissioner Phil Lampert and Kootenai County Commissioner Bruce Matar, and I apologize if I butchered his name, to consider what type of legislation our district would like to present at the IAC convention in September, and to also consider what from there to try to get the legislature to work on it. We are in the initial stages. I will tell you that I have a vision to try to capture a state-run PILT, because the northern counties of Idaho inhabit we have the majority of the endowment lands, but the majority of those funds travels to Ada and Canyon County. And that is because Ada County, for example, has a population of approximately 500,000 people. Bonner County has a population of approximately 50,000 people. So our northern counties bear the brunt of the infrastructure, but the bulk of those funds goes down to the southern counties, and that's by statute. I'm also working on Title I, Chapter 2 updates, and I've been in contact with Prosecutor Marshall and Bill Wilson, and we are now getting into the budget season. Last week, we heard an initial hearing on the housing section of our comprehensive plan. And I'd like to read a brief portion of it, because this is something that I think about as I'm looking at our employees, and that as I'm looking at our roads, and I'm thinking about the budget. How do we pay for our statutorily obligated services? And how do we keep employees driving our trucks? How do we keep police officers driving their patrol cars, keeping us safe? How do we keep our lawyers prosecuting criminals or answering emails, which there we go. I haven't emailed Bill today yet, but this is from the housing component of our plan, and I find this stark. Utilizing the median household income of Bonner County in 2021, $55,206, and factoring in the varying rates of interest over a 30-year mortgage, the annual housing expense can be calculated. The amount of this annual housing expense can be no more than 30% of the median household income to be considered affordable. 30% of the median household income results in a maximum annual housing expense of $16,561, or a monthly housing expense of $1,380. For instance, the rates of interest have risen from 3% to approximately 7% in the last 12 months as of March 2023. A median income household that could have afforded a home priced at $265,685 nearly 12 months ago could now only afford a home priced at $179,491. Having just completed the Board of Equalization in Bonner County, $179,000 will buy you approximately a lot. You will not have services, you will not have water, you will not have power. We are facing a challenge in Bonner County that government cannot solve, but we sure could make worse. And a no growth option or no supply for homes is going to have to result, if we want to have our roads plowed, cops, teachers, firefighters, they too want a place to live. And as I was chatting with someone, if I ever get the opportunity to retire, I hope that the EMS person who comes to save me when I fall off the ladder is younger than I am. It's something we're going to have to look at. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alrighty, purchases over $5,000 were $66,595 for road and bridge for the first half of the Dufert Road culvert, $70,013.40 for the second half, and the reason it was more because it included the band that fastens them together. And at that, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, based on the information before us, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion to advance it for discussion. I wanted to have a discussion on the MLD East Ledges and North Ledges view. I have some concerns on this particular MLD. It is significant in size. It's greater than, if we look at minor land division 12, 611, divisions of land into 4 or fewer lots or parcels is what we identify as a minor land division. A subdivision is what this appears to be, and our rule specifically tells us that we are not to call something an MLD in order to bypass the rules of a subdivision. So I don't agree that these two items should be approved on this agenda. I believe this should be pulled out for a deeper review. There are a lot of community members that have been involved in this, following this particular project. And I would like to unmute Ms. Reg Crawford to provide some information. And in doing so, I'll remind the board of Chapter 1-200, subsection D, that allows a commissioner to reach out for input to anybody that's present at a meeting. Jason, can you unmute Ms. Reg? Reg, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you for being available. I wanted to extend the offer for you to provide some more clarity on this particular MLD to the board before we review for decision, please.
Thank you. Reg Crawford, Sandpoint, Idaho. Since there was no public comment allowed last week, I wasn't unable to discuss that one, so I'm going to include it today. Last week's MLD, and it's actually 4 of this week's MLDs, comprised 7 contiguous MLDs, 2 of which were approved in December of 2021. Most of which were filed very close to the date the loophole was allegedly closed, and for some of the applications, the parcels didn't exist yet or had not been processed. Last week, South Ledges View was approved. In the application, the parcel was described as, quote, the remainder of parent parcel after MLD 91-21 is recorded, and under the additional project description, it stated, 4 new lots are proposed on the remainder of this parcel MLD 009121. On 009121 was filed on May 20th, 2021, and was approved by the board on December 14th, 2021. Bonner County Revised Code states that lots created by minor land division shall only be eligible for 1 minor land division for a period of not less than 2 years, and land divisions done prior to the end of the 2-year period shall be processed as a subdivision or short plat. So last week's MLD was not eligible for administrative approval. Furthermore, in the draft package for the board that is provided by the planning department for these 5 MLDs, it states that the area is covered by Selkirk Fire District. However, Selkirk Fire District opposed the rezone that made these land divisions possible, stating they could not get their fire apparatus to the site. So it's disingenuous to state that Selkirk Fire District serves these parcels when they made it clear that they cannot. In fact, there was a fire up there this May. I understand that Bill Wilson has in the past advised that MLDs filed before the loophole was allegedly closed have to be approved. We are talking about parcels on slopes from 15 to 30% that cannot be reached by fire apparatus. And in some cases, such as last week's file, parcels that didn't even exist at the time the application was filed. I did want to point out that the newly composed and adopted implementation plan, goals, objectives, and policies portions of the comprehensive plan, it states in the hazardous area portion, goals, 1, protect Bonner County from loss of lives and property due to natural hazards. 2, reduce public and private financial losses due to flood, fire, landslides, avalanches, and excessive slopes by setting standards for development in high standard areas. 2, objectives. Future development should be designed to reduce exposure to wildland fire and to provide emergency and escape routes for residents. Policies. 4, the county's wildland fire, urban/wildland interface policies and plans should be integrated into development standards. And 5, excessive slopes should be identified and development discouraged. And in the public services, facilities, and utilities portion, the objectives state that new development should be adequately served by fire protection, roads, sewers, schools, blah, blah. Again, finally, it would be remiss not to mention that the representative for these 7 MLDs is the current assistant planning director, who at the time was an employee of the company the county continues to use to review MLDs. A public hearing for these MLDs would be a more appropriate route because clearly the administrative approval process for these MLDs has been flawed. And as of July 7th, we have the district court decision that vacated 2 MLDs in Coolin because of flaws of the procedure of the minor lands decisions, where this board, by failing to discuss and issue written findings of facts and conclusions of law based on the consent agenda approval of MLDs, among other flaws. I urge you to vacate last week's MLD 0013721 due to it being illegal according to Bonner County Revised Code, and to vote no on all of the remaining 4 MLDs for the Ledges East-West Slough Group, and require them to go through the more appropriate subdivision process where the slopes, roads, and agency comments can be more thoroughly reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you, Reg. And with that, and in keeping with 12.611, wherein we are not supposed to use the MLD process to push subdivisions through, and the need to obtain additional information from legal, which should not be given in this particular meeting because it is not enough time to do a thorough review of this process, it is my recommendation that we remove MLD 13121 East Ledges, MLD 013821 North Ledges from the consent agenda, and then review that at a different time during a opportunity to get the information necessary. So
And the Slough, those are also continuous. There's 4 on this week's agenda that are continuous.
oh, that's right, MLD 12921 and then MLD 001523, thank you. And specifically, our MLD specifically tells us to not do MLDs. You can't do it just because it's contiguous, to avoid the regular process of doing subdivisions, which require us to pay more attention to some of the items within LUPA, which specifically health and safety. And when we have a statement from our other agencies that have a concern with health and safety, it demands that the board actually take a closer look at what it is doing. Since this is not the time for us to have that type of a discussion, it's reasonable just to remove those items and then review the Ledges MLDs with proper community and agency and legal involvement. So that's my amended motion, to remove those items from the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll entertain another motion.
There is a motion on the floor, Mr. Chairman, but for the purpose of discussion, as Commissioner Williams brought forth, what I would also like to bring to the attention of the county is that each of these were done according to code, and it is very clear in the information presented before us that the property is, for example, the first one, the property is zoned rural 5 and meets the requirements of that zone. The second file, the property is zoned rural residential and meets the requirements of that zone. The third one, the property is zoned agricultural forest 10 AF and meets the requirements of that zone. The fourth, the property is zoned Alpine Village and meets the requirements of that zone. The fifth, the property is zoned agriculture forest 10 and meets the requirements of that zone. The sixth, the property is zoned agriculture forest 10 and meets the requirements of that zone.
The Coolin court decision decided that that is not sufficient. Have you not been briefed?
Thank you. The seventh.
I think we can be a little bit nicer with the comment because she
Well,
may not have
interrupting
she
is
may not have understood. So in the interest of just being nice, because we can just let her know that we have switched from her talking because I asked her to speak. It could just have been a misunderstanding. Reg, if there's a follow-up needed, we'll direct it directly to you. I apologize for that.
The seventh, the property is zoned agricultural forest 10 and meets the requirements of that zone. Mr. Chairman, these minor land divisions meet the requirements as accorded by our process and are allowed according to the law. And to take away that process it's a violation of private property rights. And I would call the question so that we can vote and move forward with the business of Bonner County.
So I would
I will call
actually
the
like,
question.
I'm gonna respond to that. It's not, so this isn't an opportunity, this is an opportunity to deliberate, and that is what's in our ordinance that allows us this opportunity. And so identifying what the zones are is one thing. We're talking about an MLD of greater than 4. And our specific code that I reference in 12.611 says we are not supposed to use an MLD to get around doing a subdivision. And Reg started to comment on the Coolin decision that was made, and I am actually going to ask that Jason unmute Reg for her to provide that response to you, because we need to make an informed decision, and this is not a taking of anybody's right. What it is saying, let's review this process, because we actually have agency comment that questions the health and safety of the residents of Bonner County. And that alone is enough to say, let's just make sure that we're making the right decision here on this particular division, which is not denying anybody anything at all. You have the opportunity to ask. There is no guarantee that you will receive even a minor land division. So the only request is to not approve it now, because there are enough red flags on this particular item to justify a more thorough review of whether or not this qualifies as a minor land division versus a subdivision. Just the number alone means it's a subdivision based on 12.611. So Reg, can you provide the clarification that comes from the Coolin decision? Because I've read it, but you have read it and reread it a few times.
Right. The Coolin the court's decision found that the board's failure to issue written findings of fact and conclusion of law renders their final decision arbitrary and capricious. It stated that basically the summaries that Commissioner Amat was reading from are insufficient to be considered the discussion that this board is making its decisions on. So it currently says that the court remanded these decisions based on the reasons that the decisions were arbitrary in basis and there wasn't enough information provided, that you couldn't put them on consent agenda without that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And so because of those reasons, my request is that we pull them off, have a discussion with the necessary interested parties to include council and our community before we move forward with this division, because it clearly there is some questions on it. And in terms of just a consent agenda, one of the things that is not desirable is this significantly impacts the community, but we are in a venue where the decision is made to not allow the community to ask questions or get input. And I don't think it's appropriate to make such a change in Bonner County without allowing the community that opportunity and without actually taking into consideration the obligation of the board to ensure the health and safety of Bonner County residents, when in fact we have a statement from Selkirk Fire with a question. It demands our attention. 1 week is beneficial for us to identify a workshop and have this reviewed before we make a significant decision in Bonner County. So I would ask that the chair respectfully give us the opportunity to review this.
So Jake, these are some of the last of the ones that were done before the loophole was closed. You have to follow the law that was intact the day the application was filed, all the way through that file.
So to take it off my record, yes, so these four, they all had applied for.
They were all applied for prior to the code change that Commissioner Williams just read. So the continuous or contiguous MLD loophole that was closed, every one of those was granted a 2-year administrative decision, which is a typical process that we've always used for minor land divisions. These four, I believe each one of these had applied for an extension a couple of months ago to extend for an additional year. I denied all of those extension requests, like I said, in the last couple of months, citing the same reasons that I worked with Bill on it and decided that, we need to hold them to today's standard with that extension request. So their initial approval still was granted through August. We will not see any additional contiguous MLDs past, the 2-year mark from that code change. We've denied a number of minor land divisions over the last 2 years, citing that new code, and I think we have it dialed into where everyone understands it now. But yes, there are a handful of these that are still outstanding. We won't see any more past late this summer.
Thank you for that. The clarification of the code isn't the only thing that the commissioners can use to deny this. And that's why I point to the LUPA, the health and safety and well-being of the community. And if that is in question, that's a reason to deny something that like this. It isn't just that 12.611 was updated to prevent that. So I still maintain that it requires us to review it because we are charged as a board of commissioners to pay attention to the health and safety. And in essence, the board as a county has agreed, that this type of division is not what we should be doing, and it's supported by the fact that the code actually did change. And so since we recognize the problem, we have to make sure that we mitigate the risks before we move forward. We don't have to do this just because that was a rule back then. Health and safety actually is justification to not move forward.
Well, yeah, it actually does mean that we have to follow that.
That's
Till that
one of,
file
that's
is
one
done.
of, that's one of the elements. We
Yeah.
don't, that's one of the elements that we have to consider, but it is not a guarantee to give someone a minor land division. What the old rule allows you to request it, and but it doesn't say they have to get it. Health and safety of the community is actually a very significant tenet of that as well. And so, given that this is an issue, it's reasonable that we pull it off of consent agenda and allow the public to participate in the adjudication of this particular request, as well as more legal clarification on, is there an obligation, and by which statute is someone saying that we are obligated? We have none of that. We just have a request to approve because somebody said so. That's not enough objective information to make a decision when we do have objective information that there's a health and safety risk.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I am not interested in getting us engaged in even more lawsuits. We have experts, we call them staff, and they have met the criteria. At the time that these were filed, they met that criteria. Whether we agree with them or not, at the time of the application, this process was legal. It was a private property right at that time. And that remains a right of this property holder, which is clearly stated in the memorandum. It was reviewed by staff, and because of the lawsuit in Priest Lake, which the county is now going to spend taxpayer dollars on getting involved in, I would urge to vote to uphold this property right and move forward with the meeting.
So this is not, so we are moving forward with the meeting and discussion. Discussion is a pivotal part of this in front of the public. So it's not, we're not stopped. This is what we're supposed to do. And so it's not a right of someone to do something. They have the right to request it. It's our obligation to review anything that could be negative to the community as a whole as per the document that governs this type of action. And so this is not participating in the business. It's actually exactly what we are charged to do, and it's reasonable for us to ask the question. And I will also point out, just because a staff member writes a document, it doesn't make it the guiding document. It's an opinion. It doesn't make it accurate. It doesn't make it false. It's our information that we then must use when we're making that decision. We see that where we sometimes vote with what staff's recommendation is. We see that when we say no to what staff says. It is our obligation to review the necessary information, which we have reviewed. And there is still a question, and nothing has actually negated the comment made that there is a health and safety risk that has been identified that has not been answered. And that is important, and LUPA requires us to pay attention to that. And so we are not only looking at division, we're looking at the whole community as a whole, which we did not do in this case. So I, again, am just asking that we actually pull this out of just a consent and actually do this as a workshop review with the appropriate players involved to ensure not just the rights of property, but also the health and safety and all of the tenets of LUPA that we are charged with following.
Mr. Chairman, there is a motion on the floor which I stand by. I have given my reasons why I continue to support voting on the consent agenda. I do support the review of staff in this case. It was reviewed. The planning director gave a description of it. I am completely uninterested in getting Bonner County further enmeshed in civil litigation. And as such, I would ask that we call the question and vote and continue with the business of Bonner County.
Would you give an answer to the health and safety issue that was raised by the fire? Or, I mean, that's an objective thing to point to your response. How do we bypass that aspect, especially as in your district report, you're reporting out issues related to fire in Bonner County? So can you give a comment to that health and safety concern?
I'll give a comment.
But I know, but I'm asking him because he made the statement. So if after Luke wants to say, that's fine, but.
Sorry, thought I was.
No, Mr. Chairman, I would call the question.
So, but if you're not willing to give a response to an objective issue that's in LUPA, which is the guiding document, that is a problem. And I will point out that that is part of what causes the tension because of unwillingness to really explain the mindset. I could be 1,000% wrong, but the unwillingness to provide an actual rebuttal that has substance to it instead of saying, I don't want to increase taxes. That's just generic, but specifically answer the concern, because that's what the public is wanting to see from us as commissioners. Not just this, you look over my head and say, call the question, I first, I second, we're done. That's what's causing the problem in these meetings.
No matter,
So we had a motion, we had a second with discussion, roll call vote.
yes,
No,
Yes, motion passes. Jeff Lindsay, EMS?
I'm here. Jeff Lindsay, EMS Chief for the record. In front of you, Commissioners, we've got our annual ambulance lease payment. This is for 4 ambulances. This lease was originally approved by the County Commissioners back in June 2nd of 2020. Bonner County EMS has an annual ambulance lease renewal due with Umpqua Bank for $107,509.69. This will be paid from 99918-9350.
Motion?
Mr. Chairman, based on the information before us, I move to approve payment of the annual ambulance lease renewal in the amount of $107,509.69.
I second the motion.
Roll call vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Road and Bridge. Thank you, Jeff.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jason Taub, Director, Bonner County Road and Bridge for the record. What I got for you today is the award of bid for 7 motor graders for fiscal '24. So on July 6, 2023, the BOCC held a bid opening for the purchase of 7 motor graders to be acquired through the lease purchase program. The lease purchase agreement will be obtained through solicitation amongst the local banks and selected by competitive rates. We received 2 bids that Road and Bridge has reviewed and found them to be complete. Please reference the attached low bid. The bids received for the individual machines are as follows. Western State Cat, $359,000 with a guaranteed buyback of $271,000. This is each per grader at the end of 5 years. Pape Machinery was $434,000 with a guaranteed buyback of $325,000 each. The net savings of Pape, this is the difference between the buyback and the actual purchase price. From Pape Machinery would be $109,000. The savings between Western States Cat, the package would be $88,000 minus the buyback. The Road and Bridge Department recommends awarding the bid to Western States Cat. Funds for the annual lease payments are available and will be distributed out of our 002-9350 capital lease expenditures, which has a remaining balance of $232,595.
Move to accept the bid of $359,000 for each grader with a buyback of $271,000 and issue the notice of award to Western States Cat for purchase of 7 2023 Cat 140 AWD graders and allow the chairman to sign the notice of award.
Mr. Chairman, I second the motion.
Roll call vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Weeds, Chase.
Good morning. Chase Youngdahl, Bonner County Noxious Weeds for the record. The Selkirk Cooperative Weed Management Area is comprised of federal, state, local, municipal, tribal, and private stakeholders. And the steering committee of the Selkirk CWMA has identified 18 locations for noxious weed interpretive signage panels with boot brushes to be placed at trailheads and high-use public areas. And the Selkirk CWMA is applying as a consortium to the Resource Advisory Committee for a grant to fund this project. The Resource Advisory Committee is the local authority that distributes Title II federal funding, which is authorized from the Secure Rural Schools and Self-Community Determination Act. And it's designed to benefit resources in rural communities that are have a limited tax base due to a large footprint of federal funding. Being the chairman of the Selkirk CWMA, I've volunteered to lead this effort and to fill out and submit an application to the Resource Advisory Committee for consideration of this project, and would further manage the grant should they award one. And hence the item before you for consideration this morning.
Mr. Chairman, based on the information before us, I move to approve the Selkirk Cooperative Weed Management Area Grant Proposal for noxious weed interpretive signage panels with boot brushes, and authorize the Bonner County Noxious Weeds Department to submit the application to the Resource Advisory Committee.
Second the motion.
Roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Hey, BOCC, Commissioner Almond.
Mr. Chairman, in my report last week, I talked about my embarrassment about the conduct at our meetings, and I stand by that statement. And I believe that it is incumbent upon us as the board, the elected of the county in this regard, to determine the course of our meetings. And as such, I believe that the adoption and implementation of Robert's Rules of Order newly revised would be a good framework for us to conduct our meetings. It establishes rules, and we must start up here at the board if we have expectations of the public to abide by our rules of decorum. As such, all Bonner County public meetings, including meetings of the Bonner County Board of Commissioners, Planning and Zoning Commission, and any other advisory commission, committee, or board, shall be conducted in an orderly manner to ensure that the deliberative process is retained at all times. Board of County Commissioner meetings or other like board meetings are a governmental process with a governmental purpose. The board has an agenda to be addressed, to be dealt with, and needs to run efficient and orderly meetings. The adoption of Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised as a framework, would aid and assist in this process. The chair of each board or committee will preside over each meeting, enforce the rules, and designate who is to speak at any given time. The chair will also have the ability to appoint a sergeant at arms to assist with enforcing these rules. Mr. Chairman, based on the information before us, I move to adopt and implement Robert's Rules of Order newly revised as a framework for running meetings, and to authorize the chairman to appoint a sergeant at arms to assist in enforcing the rules.
I'll second the motion to advance it to discussion. So regularly, the issue at Bonner County isn't whether or not there's Robert's Rules of Order, and you see that regularly. We have an ordinance in place that allows for public comment. We have a system that works, but it's contingent upon those who are in the position to actually follow the guidelines. And so one of the things that I have watched with respect to Robert's Rules of Order repeatedly is commissioners who attempt to call the question without deliberation and discussion, to control the meeting, to minimize the voice of other people. The board has not actually addressed any of the concerns and issues of the public with respect to their position with speaking. We have not paid attention to the ordinances that are in place currently with respect, which means that the issue isn't whether or not there's a rule in place. There's an issue with those who are elected not having a mutual respect of the public. We have watched this where somebody repeating a statement made by an elected official somehow warrants the lack of having public comment fully, but never addresses the individual that actually started the conversation. It is a lack of respect that we have, a feeling on this board that we get to make decisions and we're not accountable to the people who explain the decision. You witnessed that just now. No comment on a safety response, but I would like to call to question. I don't want to see Robert's Rules of Order used to minimize my voice, to call to question over and over again in place of actually deliberating with myself as an elected official and the public. I think a priority of this board should be that those who oppose public comment should have first put forth a method by which the public gains their voice at their business meeting. We are representatives of the public. We are not dictators. But this, especially when I hear the ending of appointing a sergeant at arms to assist in civility, is not the direction. We have seen the movement of City of Sandpoint to say that they can control the disregard or the undesirable comment I'll argue that freedom of speech is not the speech that you like. It's actually the speech that you don't like. As a public official, we expose ourselves to that level of negativity from the public, and it is my responsibility to change how you perceive me as an elected official, not to institute new rules by which to say that you are held to or bound to. So it is not a motion that I'm going to accept, and I'll also point out that it is actually the obligation of the chair of the Board of Commissioners to state how this meeting is to be conducted and to run the meeting. If you don't feel that the meeting is being ran in accordance with the way our ordinance actually is, then the question is, do you have the right chair on your board? Not do we want to saddle with more rules? This is new to Commissioner Allman, as he didn't participate for the last few years in Bonner County meetings, but the way in which our ordinance is written, it actually has run smoothly until we have people that decided that they don't have to answer to the public. So if we want to change anything, that is the only thing we need to change.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate yet again that Commissioner Williams is so very keenly aware of what I have been doing in Bonner County and participating in meetings. Much of the time that I was in Bonner County, I was wearing a uniform or teaching government. I also grew up here, went to high school across the street, and have lived here pretty much my entire life. I married a girl I went to high school with. And one of the things that is interesting about this is the perspective that the more that we talk or we attempt to filibuster the other members of a board, or if I ask the same
I
question.
called a question. How does that feel? That's what you did to me.
Speaking, thank you.
Exactly, and that's my
We didn't
point.
interrupt you.
So that's my point.
We
That's
didn't
what it-
interrupt you.
No, but that's actually a demonstration of the point I'm trying to make. It's disrespectful, let the two of you do it, and that's
what
within.
you just did wasn't disrespectful to us.
Okay,
It
again,
goes both ways, lady.
again, what I'm
You got to
telling you,
decide which side of the fence you want to be on.
no, I don't think you understand. I did it
Oh, I
on
fully
purpose.
understand. That was
No.
a nice confession, part of what you said, but
I did it to point out that that is Robert's Rules of Order, but it is disrespectful. And the only thing that impacts that is if I respect Commissioner Ahmed and listen to what he has to say. And that does not occur. And whether or not it's a rule or not doesn't change it. It means that I have to change. It was an intentional demonstration of why this is not the answer to our problem, but a complete misunderstanding on the part of the board.
Mr. Chairman,
so we had
Mr.
a
Chairman, I believe
motion
that
and
that
we had a
proves my
second,
point.
right?
Yes. Yes, we did. I support
Okay,
Commissioner
roll call
Williams in
vote.
calling the questions. Yes.
No.
Yes. Okay, BOCC, Ms. Williams.
So I would like, the board has not been actually doing our meeting until 10 a.m. We have had a very good turnout with the commissioner chat, with actually a lot of valuable information. Today's meeting with elections was pretty eye-opening. So since the board isn't occupying that, it is very early. I would like to be able to use the 9 a.m. hour for the commissioner chat session. We have a lot of people that are lined up to give that discussion. It would help also ease the hardship on county employees that are willing to participate so that they don't have to get here at 8. It'll also help out with technology. So I move to allow the District 2 Commissioner chat with the community to start at 9 a.m. and on Tuesdays recurring and ending at 9:45, giving the technician opportunity to transfer from that session to the business meeting at 10 a.m.
Mr. Chairman, I would amend Commissioner Williams' motion to return to our regular business meeting as is written in County Code 1-202, regular meetings. Regular business meetings of the board shall be held weekly on Tuesday commencing at 9 o'clock until the conclusion of business or until continued to a later time and date by a majority vote of the board.
That's really not an amendment. That's a completely different thing. And I would say that if this board doesn't want to have a discussion with the community, and I'm willing to do that, it could be just like throwing a bone to let the community come in at 9 instead of 8. This, if you watch these videos, it's actually beneficial to the community wide. And so there is nothing negative. Commissioner Ahmed stepped in on both meetings. He was invited to stay for the meeting with elections. It is a video that I think our county should have actually put out in the community a long time ago. So if you don't want to hear the people talk, that's fine. Can you at least let them not have to try to get here so early to accommodate? We haven't been using the 9 o'clock slot, so to go back to it is just another slap in the face to the public. So I move that we allow the commissioner chat discussion to begin at 9 a.m.
Mr. Chairman, I will stick with my amendment, which is that the regular business meeting resumes, and I'm seeing if there is a second for that. No, I am not going to second Commissioner Williams' proposal because we have an ordinance that is codified, which I believe that we should follow the law as it is written. So, Mr. Chairman, I move, which is an amendment of the original, that we resume our regular business meetings held weekly on Tuesday at 9 a.m.
That's what's so
I will
interesting
step
is
down
you,
from the chair and
if
second
you
that roll call
actually,
vote.
if you actually look at our agenda, for as much as you guys want to
Roll
follow
call.
rules, you owed public comment because it was agendized.
Yes.
And you did not actually give public comment. And so what you're showing the community is you're only going to follow the rules that you want. You were actually advised
your
early
opinion.
on that it was on the agenda. And you were asked, are you going to allow us to speak? And you refused to ask as the chair. And that is the problem.
No, I
You're-
did act as the chair.
No,
just
you did
didn't
not
like what I
answer.
said.
You did not answer in advance, but we noticed. And you have received input from legal that says, if it's on the agenda, people come to the meeting for the agenda. So you should move forward with the agenda. And so for the last 2 weeks, we have moved forward and you've walked down here and said, public comment limited to 60 minutes. Nope, we're going to start at 10. But now, because I want to use that slot, because I have a reasonably good community use for that slot, you want to go back to having the meeting at 9 when that's the only reason. This is not even an agenda item. That's not an amendment. So why would you do that to the community as you then want to say mutual respect? You don't respect people, but you are using your position to disrespect them and to silence them for your convenience. So how does the community earn their spot that the ordinance that you reference actually talks about the public comment segment? How do they get that back? Because you're just picking what you want out of this. One of the things that has happened is both of you have told news outlets that the state doesn't require this. But that's not the only deciding factor. The county has an ordinance with respect to the public comment segment. And it specifically tells us it's supposed to be that you guys have an interaction. We're not going to answer you, but it's your opportunity to identify things that you may want us to put on the agenda. You have been advised that that should actually change, but that's not ever what happens. It's always you guys don't want something, but then you expect to be respected as elected officials. And what your response is then, the next thing is nobody can come to the meeting because I said so. That's not how we should proceed, and it's not how you ran on transparency. You have not identified the calendaring of items for the community. The ordinance tells you to as the chair. They don't know how to get things on. They can't speak, and you don't respond to emails. But you're pushing an agenda that is negative in the community. And are you going to you're going to all of a sudden learn all of Robert's Rules of Order to follow it to a T? We've struggled a lot with a 4-page ordinance document. It's not reasonable. And you cannot tell me that it matters that you don't come down here until 10 when they are actually coming here at 9. It is disgusting if you don't allow them to get here at 9. And it shows you that you have no interest in actually following the rule that allows the public meaningful comment and input into Bonner County business. If you don't allow them to just come here at 9. You weren't down here at 9, we still talked. Same thing happened last week. So I felt it was reasonable to just change it because you were up in your office. So was Commissioner Ahmed. So why create another hardship for the community?
If you were so adamant about rules, what's the rule when you call for a roll call vote? You want to explain that one to us?
I will tell you. The
Okay.
rules are only as good as those who follow. And I can't abide by the rules and actually make progress in
that's
the
something.
county. And so it is
Roll
something.
call vote,
What does
Commissioner
it
Williams.
do? What does it do you if you
Continue.
silence the community? Because here's the only
Continue.
thing I can do. is she can say
You can call
Commissioner
for a vote,
Williams, and
Commissioner.
if I don't give my vote, we're not done, because you don't have the right to take a vote away from me. That's the only thing I can do, because the two of you coordinated effort to silence myself and the community consistently. So this is the only thing that I can do, is say what I want to say, when I want to say it, when you call for vote, because as you found out last time when you said mute her, that doesn't work.
I never
So this
said
is,
mute you.
see, you have a memory issue. It's a whole video. And I was,
You can't be muted. We're established that fact.
and
We're just
therefore,
trying to get you to respect the rules of the board, but you don't want to go
this is
along
the
with it.
problem.
You want to make them up for yourself as you go along.
I'm not making
That apply to
any
you
rule
and
up.
not the rest of
Mr.
us.
Chairman,
So
So-
roll call vote, Commissioner
Yes,
Williams.
and as I was pointing out to you, we can't move past my vote until I actually cast it.
Okay, well,
You
how
do
about
not get
this?
to.
It is
Go ahead and adjourn it.
10:55.
Mr. Chairman.
No,
did you vote?
hey, it's fine, because we have not
No, I haven't been
voted. So
called
go ahead and
to vote.
adjourn it. Go ahead, adjourn. 10:55.
She can answer or not answer. Call my name. Yes, motion passes. It is 10:55. We will recess for 10 minutes and go into executive session upstairs.